Well, hello and welcome to Are We There Yet? There are so many things happening today in the world of transportation and mobility. The way that we move around our world and beyond and explore the Earth is really changing every single day. Things like developments within space exploration, autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, high-speed trains, drones, and robots. There's new things happening every single day. And as I understand, there's also a lot that's happening under the sea and in the world of submarines. And so today to speak with us about that is the co-founder and president of Triton Submarines, Patrick Lahey. Patrick, hello, and welcome to Are We There Yet?
Well, thank you very much, Grant. Glad to be here. Appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you and your listeners and to give you a little insight into my company here, or our company here at Triton Submarines in Sebastian, Florida, and also our facility over in Barcelona, Spain.
Well, thank you so much. I've really been looking forward to this conversation for a long time now, and really do appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk and to introduce to our audience Triton Submarines and some of the incredible work that you're doing. Patrick, you have an incredible background, and I've really enjoyed since meeting, learning a little bit more about your background and who you are and Triton Submarines and just some of the incredible accomplishments that you've achieved to date. Patrick, if you don't mind, I'd like to brag on you just a little bit, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background and maybe share, some of that with the audience. But, would share a couple of achievements and milestones that I was really impressed with is that you're one of the first individuals to dive the Challenger Deep twice while accompanied by another explorer. In fact, the second Canadian to reach the bottom of the Mariana Trench. You've also successfully completed the world's deepest ever salvage operation at a depth of 10,927 meters. So just some incredible accomplishments within your career as a professional diver. I understand that you started diving in 1975, and you've been professionally diving now for over 40 years, since 1982. And have really been involved in kind of the evolution and innovation of submarines and the actual vessels themselves. I think have been involved in work within over 60 manned submersibles. So you really are, I think, one of a handful of people in the entire world that really is an expert and has completed, so many dives yourself. And so wanted to just, share a few of those milestones, with the audience today. But, would love, if you don't mind, maybe speaking a little bit more just about your background and the development of Triton Submarines and kind of bringing us up to where you are today, if you don't mind sharing.
Sure. Okay. Well, for me, it sort of all began as a kid living in Barbados. I grew up in Canada, so about as far away from the ocean as a person could be, really, in a city of Ottawa. And I was lucky, though, at the age of 7, my family moved to Barbados, and I had an opportunity to see the ocean for the first time. And, I fell head over heels in love with the ocean. And it was clear from that point on that it was going to have a role in my life. As you mentioned, I started diving when I was just 13, and I became a commercial diver about 5 years later when I was just 18, and really was committed to whatever I did in my life. It was going to involve the ocean. I was incredibly fortunate to work for a commercial diving company in the early part of my career that had some submersibles. The subs were being used in the oil and gas industry in those days. And I made a dive in a sub at the age of 21 that made such an indelible impression on me. I decided to devote the rest of my professional life to the development of these kind of vehicles because they are fantastic. They have the ability to transport you to a part of our world that most people never get to see. And I think there's something incredibly powerful about seeing things in real time with our senses. So human-occupied vehicles have been, a fixation, an obsession of mine. In, I guess, 2006, 2007, I started Triton Submarines with my former partner, who just retired last year. And it's been quite a journey. Initially, we struggled to get people to take us seriously, as you might expect. People's perception of a sub or a submersible, which is what we build, is that they were dangerous and frightening. And, if you get in one, there's probably a better than average chance you might not get back out again. And all these kind of myths were something that we were sort of fighting against, if you will. It took a long time to educate the market and to demonstrate to people that subs are extraordinary. They're simple, they're fun, they're safe, they're exciting. And as I mentioned, they allow you to see a part of our world you couldn't see any other way. And gradually, over the course of Triton's trajectory, which is now 16 years, we've got more traction, and we've gone from being a fringe product that people were afraid of to a product that people have begun to uniformly recognize has the capacity to transform the ownership experience of a yacht. So our principal customer are yacht owners. We build these wonderful subs that are about the size of, say, an SUV. You put them on your yacht, you transport it around the world. And when you get to a place that looks like it might be interesting, you put the sub in the water and you go and explore. And I think people began to see how much owning a sub enhanced the experience of owning that yacht, because it allowed them to share these rich experiences with their friends, their family members, their guests. And as that knowledge became sort of more out there, you had more and more people adopting the idea of buying a sub. And I'm happy to say that today, I have 8 subs in my shop. I think this year we may sell as many as 12 subs, which is completely unprecedented. And that's all a function of how long it's taken us to get to the point where, people really want these things, really enjoy them. So I don't know if that was too long of an explanation, but
just right. That was perfect. I really appreciate that. I think you touched on a few things that I'm really curious about. I love what you shared about this idea of just when you found a cool spot that looks interesting to explore, get the sub out and explore. And I would think that the idea of kind of exploring uncharted territory and exploring new worlds is something that few experiences aside from a submarine that anyone can have these days. I think of the discovered world that we live in, but the ocean, as you've described, is still undiscovered, uncharted territory in many areas.
Absolutely a true statement. In fact, you hit on possibly the most important issue, which is every time you get in a sub and you dive below 40, 50 meters, 120, 150 feet, you are probably and almost certainly seeing things that perhaps nobody has ever seen before. So this notion that you become an explorer in the very true sense of the word, that you're seeing something that no one's ever seen before, is, I think, one of the reasons these products appeal to people so strongly. The idea that you're getting in this thing, you're seeing something that's unique. You might discover something new. You might have the opportunity to witness something extraordinary, and all of that, I think, is why you're not only seeing more people buy subs. You're seeing that in yachting, the yachts themselves are transforming. Yachts used to be something that we would associate with luxury. They have, expensive artwork on the walls. They're very opulent, very ornate. And yachts are transforming. They're no longer about that. They're about the places that they can go and the experiences you can have with them. And the subs, of course, dramatically augment and enhance the yacht, because they allow you to explore that third dimension, that other dimension, the ocean itself. And so, we feel very privileged to have the opportunity to create these wonderfully unique vehicles. And one of the things that's really special about these subs is, for the most part, all of them feature these transparent pressure boundaries that are made of acrylic, which is a type of plastic, but it's completely transparent. It is very strong, and it has a similar refractive index to water. So when you dive in a Triton sub, it's almost like that pressure hull vanishes. You can no longer see any barrier between you and the wonderful world that you're exploring. And you have this really immersive experience. You have this sense that you could reach out and touch the things that are out there, or they could swim into the cabin with you. And so, it profoundly affects people. People come out of a sub dive and they absolutely are changed, mostly because it's dramatically different from anything they might have expected. And it it also makes such an indelible impression on them, like it did to me when I was, just a 21-year-old kid diving off a drilling rig in Santa Barbara, California.
Wow. What an experience. As I hear you describe that and what the experience is like for the individuals fortunate enough to have that opportunity, I'm becoming very excited about the idea of maybe one day having an opportunity to experience traveling in a submarine. And that's an idea that I'm really excited about speaking with you today. Because I understand that Triton Submarines also has a very important mission to provide those types of experiences to everyday people, for something that maybe traditionally was limited to yacht owners, as you shared, and you work with many clients, within that area, or members of our military, that might have an opportunity to travel in a submarine, but those opportunities are few and far between. And so I understand that you've really taken it on as a personal mission and is a mission of Triton Submarines to provide this experience to everyday people. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So we've actually developed a range of what we call our commercial range of products that are intended to carry larger numbers of people, in some cases, not necessarily to quite as deep a depth, but the idea being to be able to take more people on these extraordinary dives and give a larger number of the population a chance to see what it's like to be in a sub. Yeah. So we've recently begun to sell products into the cruise ship market. Mm-hmm. And, that's an exciting development because even cruise ships are changing. A lot of the cruise ships, the boutique ones, the ones that cater to a smaller audience that's more interested in adventure exploration, we're going to places that are maybe off the beaten path a little bit, going to Galapagos, Antarctica, places that might not necessarily be on the typical routes that you see of the really big cruise ships, but cruise ships that go there because the guests that are on board want to explore, just like the people that are buying, these yachts that are now configured that way. And so the subs fit well into that because they get to this unique destination and, they can climb around in the mountains or the hills or in the particular place they are. Or they can go and have terrestrial experiences, but now they can also get in a sub and go down and see what the ocean looks like in that unique place. And I think that's very exciting as well. We're seeing an uptick in an industry that I was involved in many, many years ago, which is tourist submarines. So these are submarines that, for all intents and purposes are like a bus. Imagine a bus that goes underwater, but that carries a large number of people and allows them to see it, where you don't necessarily have to have the capability to own a mega yacht or even to pay the cost of being on a very expensive, exclusive cruise ship, but where you just go to a destination, you pay a ticket price, you get into this craft and you go and experience the ocean. So tourist submarines have been around for a while, but there hasn't been really much activity in any sort of, there hasn't been any sort of contemporary tourist submarines until we delivered a sub about 2 or 3 years ago to a company in Vietnam. And this submarine carries 24 people. We call it the Deep View, and it's a Deep View 24. It's a modular design. It can actually be scaled anywhere from 6 all the way up to 66 passengers. This particular one is configured for 24 passengers, dives to 100 meters, about 330 feet, but it can make 8 or 10 dives a day and take lots of people. And, you pay your ticket price and experience a dive. And it's important for us to do that because if you want to create interest in the ocean, excitement about the ocean, advocacy for the ocean, you have to allow people to experience it, because nobody's going to protect something unless they care about it. If you want to get people to care about it, take them on a sub dive, show them how beautiful it is, and I can virtually guarantee you, without exception, the people that come out of that submarine, whether it's a tourist submarine diving to 50 meters on a coral reef in the Caribbean somewhere, or it's a submarine that takes you down thousands of meters on a research or exploration vessel, or maybe even a private yacht, you're going to come back changed. You're going to come back as someone that suddenly recognizes how beautiful, how unique, how special that part of our world is, and how we need to work harder to protect it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so exciting, and really compliment you and the organization for bringing that type of experience to a greater percentage of the population. So I think that's just a really incredible mission, and I think ultimately will result in some of the things that you mentioned in terms of just increased support and excitement about protecting the ocean and our environment there. So I know that'll happen largely through some of the work that you're already doing. So definitely want to compliment you on that. Are there, is there something that you feel is driving, what I see right now is a real interest, amongst everyone to kind of get out and explore the world a little bit more. I feel like maybe it has a little bit to do with, COVID over the last few years here, and many of us were a bit limited, in our travel, but I feel like everyone right now is just so excited to get out into the world and explore. And I think that what you're offering in these projects just really fall in line well with that. Do you feel like, maybe that or other things over the last few years have kind of contributed to this, real interest in getting out and exploring our world more?
Sure. I think it's a combination of things. Actually, I believe there's a number of factors that contribute or at least account for why people are taking a greater interest in the natural world in general. I think you're seeing an increased number of documentaries about the natural world that bringing those stories into our living rooms and allowing us to learn more about the remarkable planet that we live on. Yeah. You look at a documentary like Blue Planet 2, which incidentally used Triton subs to do the underwater stuff. That documentary reached an audience of 4 billion people. Wow. Now that's engagement. And I think people watch that documentary and they hear those stories and they listen to and get to see and experience the things that those who made the documentary have seen, and it makes an impression. I think it encourages us as a species to want to go out and have those experiences ourselves when they're possible. And I think that combined with advances in technology that are allowing us to produce better subs, more capable subs, the fact that people are actually wanting to order these things, buy them and set them up is an indication that people's perception of a submarine are changing. And that's all important to getting people comfortable enough to climb in one and go diving. By the way, that sub that I mentioned that we built for the Vietnamese company called the Deep View 24 features a completely transparent pressure hull. Again, you're inside this cylindrical tube that no matter what direction you look in, you've got an extraordinary view. Again, it has that really immersive experience. So I think those are definitely contributing factors. I think we're beginning to recognize too that, and I think this is a great consequence of maybe some of the things, the bad news that we keep hearing about the impact that humanity is having on the world, is that we're starting to care about the natural world. That means we want to get out in the woods. We want to go for a hike. We want to, take a trip to Patagonia or, explore the Rockies, whatever it might be. And that fortunately also includes a desire amongst a lot of people to see what it's like underwater. Not everybody gets that opportunity, as you say. Not all of us are afforded the opportunity to go underwater and see what that world looks like. But it would be, in a perfect world, wouldn't it be great if everybody had that chance? Because I think if you wanted to create a groundswell of support for why we need to be more careful about how we treat our ocean, that's a great way to do it.
No kidding. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I compliment you on that work, and I think question early within our conversation about just this idea of making it available to a larger percentage of the population is so inspiring, and I think you've kind of officially confirmed on the Are We There Yet podcast that we are fast approaching. I think a point where these types of experiences are going to be available, and I know that I'm really excited about that. You talked a little bit about the experience of traveling in a submarine, and you've had some incredible experiences, I can imagine. And as I shared, one of the few people who's ever been to the deepest depths of our ocean. Would love if you don't mind sharing, maybe a quick story or two or an experience. It's just, I have few opportunities to speak with someone, and I imagine our audience as well to hear and just to see someone, that's had some of those experiences. Would you mind, sharing maybe a notable dive or experience with the audience?
Sure, I'd love to. Well, stories is one of my favorite things. I love telling people about the unique experiences that I've been very fortunate to have in submersibles, and that I hope more people get to enjoy. If I think back on my career, which now spans over 40 years in diving subs, there have certainly been some moments that were of particular, importance to me personally, professionally, things that left, once again, an indelible impression, things I'm never going to forget, at least until, I get older than I already am. But I think that, it's hard to sort of nail it down to a single experience, but I think one of the things that stands out early in my career was diving on the Space Shuttle Challenger, which was, a tragic accident, as we all know, but having the opportunity to be on that site and recovering bits and pieces from the solid rocket boosters, which were in the deep part of the debris field from a submersible, I felt, particularly fortunate to have the opportunity to be part of that recovery. It was an extraordinary salvage, one of the largest salvage at the time. I think it was the largest salvage undertaking of its kind. Mm-hmm. And but it was also a very solemn, very difficult experience too. When you saw these pieces of this majestic craft on the seafloor, it brought home, with sort of stark reality, just how terrible an accident that was. So that certainly was a memorable one. I think the dives that I did in, I guess it was around 2002 with James Cameron in the filming of Aliens of the Deep, it was really almost surreal, almost like being on a movie set, but we weren't. We were on a natural site out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and we were diving 4 subs simultaneously. So 4 subs diving together in this area that looked like a cathedral, but it was a cathedral of hydrothermal vents and just this strikingly beautiful but very unusual looking place where these 4 subs were interacting as part of this film that Jim was making. And I still can vividly remember, being there in that situation with 3 other subs and little robotic vehicles, and thinking to myself, pinching myself, thinking how incredible is it, that I'm sitting in this seat, next to Jim, being part of this undertaking. I had the privilege of taking a lot of people on dives in the Cayman Islands, over the course of several years, where we made thousands of dives to shipwrecks and other natural sites in the Cayman Islands. They were beautiful dives, and it did introduce a large number of people. I also worked for a tourist submarine company called Atlantis Submarines, and they built those big tourist submarines that I mentioned earlier. The first models carried 28 people, then they went to 46, and the last one we built carried 66 people. I think that company has taken millions of people on submarine dives over the course of their tenure in the industry, and what a wonderful thing that they have done. And of course, for me, certainly one of the great and most memorable dives of my whole life was the opportunity that I was given to dive to Challenger Deep, and the privilege of being part of a team of incredible people that built this unusual, I would say, groundbreaking craft that I think has fundamentally changed our relationship with the deep ocean. It's the first time a submarine has been created that was both accredited, certified, and that could dive to the deepest places in the ocean, but it could do it repeatedly. And I had the privilege and the opportunity to dive a couple of times in 2019 and then 3 more times in 2015 with a gentleman by the name of Larry Connor. And that was extraordinary. And all of those dives and the incredible experiences that we had on the 5 Deeps expedition with Victor and Caledon Oceanic, I'll never forget them. They were by far, I mean, it was just, we were so lucky to have an opportunity to be given the opportunity, I should say, to develop that sub. And that's the stuff that we live for here at Triton, really.
Amazing stories. I really appreciate you sharing that with the audience. It's really easy to see and to hear how passionate you are about it, and I think that there's so many just areas of inspiration that obviously drive you and a real purpose behind all of your work. So really easy to see and to hear that, and I understand that you also have really surrounded yourself with a circle of people, of individuals, of other pioneers and leaders that are as equally passionate about the organization and your projects as you are. Would you mind sharing a little bit about some of the individuals and organizations that are a part of your work? And I understand too, just a couple of months ago, made a big announcement about 2 individuals that are supporting the organization, but would love to hear more about, some of the representatives within kind of that circle that are supporting and involved in the projects that you've described.
Yeah. So you're absolutely correct that we have recently had a kind of an interesting development here at the company when 2 great friends, great clients, kindred spirits, people who share my love and passion for the ocean, decided to join me as partners in the company, in Triton. Of course, their names are Ray Dalio and James Cameron. Interestingly, I talked a moment ago about my dives with Jim back in sort of 20 years ago. So I've known Jim a long time, more than 20 years. He's an extraordinary individual, as I'm sure you know, in his own right. But one of the things a lot of people don't know is that, he really is in love with the ocean. Like me, he absolutely and deeply cares about what's happening in the ocean space. And interestingly, one of the things he said to me, many, many years ago is, I make feature films to support my underwater documentary filmmaking habit. Because he truly does love that stuff. It's the kind of thing he lives for. He's also, he's a formidable technical person. He really understands the technology that goes into creating these vehicles. He has brilliantly inspired ideas about what we could create. I mean, you'll have to see his film to recognize that this is a guy with some pretty interesting ideas. And, the attention to detail and his interest in technology and the development of new technology is one of the things that excites me about his involvement in the company and the potential that exists for us to continue innovating and creating remarkable products. Ray Dalio was first introduced to me about 12 years ago. He first started as a customer of ours. And, for those of you who don't know, Ray is a very accomplished individual, but he's extraordinarily bright man, very articulate, and also happens to be a passionate, ardent ocean advocate, a man who cares deeply about the ocean and the things that are happening in the ocean space. Among his many accomplishments, he founded OceanX, and OceanX is sort of his counter to SpaceX. Yeah, there's a lot of interest in space and humanity going into space and exploring space, and that's wonderful. But it's his belief, and I happen to share this, and I think so does Jim, that we really need to be focused on exploring our own planet, and in particular the ocean. And there is so much of it to explore. So Ray founded OceanX a few years ago, and that organization is devoted to furthering our knowledge and understanding of the ocean by going out on these ambitious expeditions, allowing scientists to have access to the most advanced tools and equipment that have ever been put together on a single vessel, so they can prosecute these expeditions, learn more about the things that are happening in the ocean space, document it, create fantastically compelling content that we can then share with the broader human family in the form of documentaries and so on. And of course, Jim and Ray are great friends. They're also people who share this fascination with, this interest in creating compelling content. And so I think the possibility of us collaborating in producing wonderfully capable vehicles that can go out and do these interesting expeditions and then collect content that we can share with people is perhaps the thing that excites me the most. But in addition to those two wonderful individuals, these two men that I deeply admire and respect joining Triton and all the exciting possibilities that come about as a result of that, I am blessed with the opportunity to work with, I think, the most skilled, most experienced, most brilliant group of individuals, men and women, both here in the United States and over in Europe and in the UK, who design, engineer, and manufacture these wonderful machines that allow us to explore the ocean. I wish there was an opportunity for you to meet them all because they're incredible. And of course, ultimately, it boils down to the people because they're the ones that make these things possible. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. No, what an incredible team, and it is, I think, all about the people. And I think that Triton is very blessed, very fortunate to have such an incredible group of individuals and companies. And I think you're all pioneers by definition, as evidenced just by the incredible work that you've done. And you mentioned one thing, within sharing some of those stories with me that all share a common belief that there's a real need to explore the planet that we live on. And certainly space exploration, exciting, but the real passion that you and the organization and colleagues have on further exploring the world here. Would you mind maybe just touching on that a little bit, because I find it fascinating. I've heard analogies before that we know more about the surface of the moon, for example, than we do, areas of the ocean. And that's really intriguing and exciting and thought-provoking to think about. Do you mind, maybe touching a little bit just on that and how truly undiscovered, as I understand, the ocean really is?
Well, it's a very important point to make, actually, and I think you can't really emphasize it enough. We do seem to, as a species, we've been fixated in our interest about the space and space exploration, and a great way to, I think, illustrate that is to use an example that an individual, local scientist, prominent scientist named Grant Gilmore, who's an ichthyologist, once told me that. And this goes back to the days of the space shuttle. But in the days there was a space shuttle, the budget that was required to launch a space shuttle was large enough to finance the entire world budget for ocean exploration for like 80 years or so. Wow. So there's a stark contrast between the money that's being invested in ocean exploration and space exploration. Of course, space exploration isn't easy. And I think it's a wonderful example of what humanity is capable of. And I'm not suggesting that we not explore space, but I do think that there is a need for us to kind of double down and focus more of our time, energy, resources on ocean exploration, because frankly, there's a lot for us to learn. There's a lot for us to discover. And the analogy I like to use is, imagine if you bought a house and you only ever lived on the first 2 floors. You never went down and checked out what was in the basement. Wouldn't you be kind of curious? Hey, what's in the basement?
Yeah.
There might be some really cool stuff down there.
Sure.
And as it happens, there is. The basement, as I call it, the ocean, is a remarkable part of our world. It's a beautiful part of our world. And it happens to be many other things too. It's the thing that controls our climate. It provides 2/3 of the oxygen that we need to survive on the planet. It is the vast, most of the biomass on Earth is in the ocean. So the ocean's health is tied directly to ours. We harm the ocean at our peril. We really need to take a moment and think about how important the ocean is to our ongoing survival on the planet and what we might learn. How exciting is it that during the Five Deeps expedition, for example, an expedition that spanned 10 months, transited something like 50,000 nautical miles, we discovered, I believe it was something like 40 to 80 new species. I'm not talking about little microscopic things. I'm talking about things that we didn't know exist. These had been seen for the first time. I think we collected something like 400,000 samples. That was one ship. And we also mapped, I think, 750,000 square kilometers of ocean, which is an area, I think, about the size of Italy. And actually, that's just sort of a drop in the bucket, because much of the ocean is not mapped. Most of it has not been explored. And I think that we have almost a responsibility to learn more about it because of the fantastic things that are there, but the importance of it in our world. So I'd like to see, and of course, I probably would say this, but I'd like to see more and more people taking an interest in considering an oceanic career rather than a career on land or one where they aspire to go into space, because of how much opportunity there exists for you to discover something new, something important, something that could have far-reaching consequences. And so I don't know what the numbers are of, because I've heard all kinds of things. I've heard we've explored less than 5% of the ocean. I don't know that that's true, but it's a minuscule percentage of what is a vast place. I mean, if you've ever flown across the Pacific Ocean in a plane, doing 600, knots or whatever it is, and how long it takes you to do that, you realize how vast an area. And if you've ever gone by boat, as I have, you'll quickly recognize, just how big that area is. I don't know if you ever taken a look at our planet from space, where you're just looking at the Pacific Ocean, but it virtually covers the entire area that you could see, when it starts to curve. We all know that it represents 70% of the surface of the Earth. And so, I think we have an obligation to not just protect it, but also to go out and study it. And that's why I'm so excited to be aligned with people like Jim and Ray and their vision that we need to have more ships out there, more exploration, more scientists having access to these parts of our world that historically they haven't had access to, and maybe better fund some of the ambitious initiatives that currently don't provide that funding. A lot of scientists out there who are brilliant and have these wonderful ideas of things they'd like to study, but who simply don't have the resources to be able to go out there and do that work.
Definitely. No, thank you so much. That's very inspiring, and I love that idea, and the analogy really resonates with me as well. That this idea of buying a new house and living on just the first and second floor and not exploring that basement, and gosh, I can imagine it's certainly a lot easier and less expensive and probably safe to explore that basement than it is climbing up on the roof. So I can definitely see the value there and get down.
I like that. You took it a little further.
Yeah. So get down, explore that basement for sure, and it's cool too to think about this idea of you and your team and those within the industry are discovering aliens every day, right? I mean, these new species, every single day, it sounds like just a dive, as you shared, discovering all these new species, which are kind of the same thing as aliens. So I really love that as well. So I think that's really cool and fascinating. And I think as you have encouraged, and I definitely would now as well, for individuals and especially young people out there and those looking to kind of develop and start their career, what an incredible opportunity, inspiring and just exciting and to be a pioneer. I think that your industry really presents. So I really like the idea of that. Any predictions? I'd be curious, any thoughts? I think you had alluded to this, and obviously I'm very excited about some of what you shared with me already, but as you look to the future, the next 5, 10, 20 years, for Triton Submarines, and beyond that, within the industry, when you talk about this idea of just this uncharted territory and how little we know about the world's oceans, and especially, when you get to those type of depths, what kind of secrets might be down there? What possibilities, which I'm sure are endless, do you kind of think about when you think to the future and to continued exploration? Anything that comes to mind?
I can't even begin to imagine what there might be, but knowing the things that I've been fortunate to see and where I've been part of expeditions where they've discovered things, I think the answer to that is, well, a lot. There's a lot that we're going to learn. There's a lot that we're going to discover, and there's a lot that we're going to, it's interesting. And if you think about contemporary history, we kind of believed in imagine the mid 70s, let's say, we really kind of had it all figured out, right? We know what's going on the planet. We know most of the things that are happening. And then 1978, a sub actually dives on a thing called a hydrothermal vent. I think it was Woods Hole. And they discovered this hydrothermal vent community in the Atlantic Ocean. We mistakenly believed that all life on Earth was photosynthesis based. It all depended on the sun and the interactions between the sun in some form or another. And for the most part, that might be true. But here in 1978, relatively contemporary history, they discover this community of animals, not just living, but thriving in deep, deep water on the chemicals that are coming out of the water that's jetting out of these hydrothermal vents. And it turned the science community on its head because suddenly there was chemosynthesis. And, well, guess what? That didn't exist. It wasn't even part of, probably if you go back to 1975 and looked at a dictionary, there wasn't, a word for that. So that's, I think maybe it's just a silly example, but it's an example of the fact that there are things to be learned, discoveries to be made, species identified, and all kinds of other things. And I'm not really I'm not a scientist, so I'm not really properly qualified to even proffer what we might see. But isn't it exciting to consider that if you turn the light on in that basement and you start looking in the rooms and start opening doors and closets, there might be a little secret passageway that leads you to something else. And I just think we have to start taking that more seriously. And look, exploration in the ocean is not easy. The pressures, particularly in the deep ocean, are immense. There are significant technical and engineering challenges associated with taking, equipment into the deep sea. And there's also weather to consider. I think part of the reason that space has always kind of enjoyed an upper hand to ocean is because of this idea that when you look up in the sky and you see the twinkling stars, it's easy to kind of imagine, oh my God, what's out there, versus looking out over the ocean, which looks dark and scary and foreboding. But when you get under the surface and you put those lights on and you get up to a seamount or a beautiful pinnacle and you suddenly see how magnificent it is, well, that's why those things are so important, because our perception that the ocean is dark and scary and filled with monsters is, I think, a big part of why it lags behind in popularity with space and why people are more inclined to put money into that. But at the end of the day, I personally believe this, and this is just a personal belief, that, there is no sort of other planet, let's face it. So we should probably think about looking after the one we've got. And why not, while we're here and depending on this planet, explore it further? Invest some time, energy, and resources into ocean exploration and to giving the brilliant people on our planet who want to study the ocean the tools and equipment they need to do that effectively. Fund some of the fantastically interesting and ambitious ocean initiatives that will allow us to gain that knowledge and that understanding, because with it, who knows what we might learn and how those how that information might help us in all kinds of ways. I mean, I've heard all kinds of things, discoveries that might help us, cure diseases, to solving our energy problems, to all kinds of things. Who knows? Again, I don't presume to be bright enough to be able to suggest what those are, but isn't it kind of exciting to consider for a moment? Why don't we? I mean, it's right here, right?
Yep. It is. It's right here, ready to explore. And I love that answer. I think that's the best answer. Who knows what we might discover as you shared, things to be learned, discoveries to be made, and we don't know what's around the corner. And I think that that's really the core of why it's so exciting. And one of the few areas in the world that we don't know.
Here's an interesting thing for you too. I know sometimes scientists are asked when they're trying to get funding for, a mission that they might want to prosecute, where they want to go out and do this or do that, study this, study that, collect this, collect that. One of the things that they typically always ask is, what do you expect to discover? And I think it is a very difficult thing for them to answer, because if they knew that, then they probably wouldn't need to go out there to do it. So we're curious as a species by nature. We want to learn things. We want to discover things. We want to experience things. And I think that the greatest potential for us to discover interesting, new, exciting things that might have a significant impact on what's happening in our world is in the ocean. It's the area of our planet we've spent the least amount of time and energy exploring, and the place where there's so much still for us to see and to learn. That's exciting to me.
It's very exciting. And I think they should reverse, maybe the process of those kind of funding programs to maybe where that's the winning answer. What do you aim to discover, or what do you expect to find? And I think if the answer is who knows, we're just curious, I think that's a winning project. So
it's a valid answer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know that I am certainly inspired by our conversation today, and I mean that sincerely, and I think I will take this in my life, forevermore, to where I think you've really planted a seed of curiosity in me, and I love this idea of just being an explorer and going after those projects that we don't quite know what the result is. So that's really inspiring to me, and I know that it will be equally inspiring to many members of the audience. And so, would you mind sharing with everyone, the website and maybe direct us all to where we can learn more about the company?
Sure. If you'd like to learn more about Triton Submarines, you just have to go to our website, which is Triton Subs. That's TritonSubs. So Triton Subs, all one word, .com. There's lots of stuff there that you can look at. You can read about the different models. You can look at pictures. You can also learn more about some of the unique projects that we've undertaken. And we'd be grateful for any interest you've got. And I really thank you, Grant, for taking the time to speak with me and giving me an opportunity to speak with your audience. Next thing I want to do is get you in a sub, because if I did that, I guarantee you that when you spoke to your audience the next time, you could be as animated and as excited about how that experience impacted you as I've been talking with you today.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today. And that's an incredible offer. And I'd love to take you up on that someday, because I couldn't be more excited about you and the company and the work that you're doing to create these type of experiences for all of us. So really appreciate all of your work and again for taking the time to talk today. And I encourage everyone out there to visit the website, learn more about Triton Submarines, and to all of those young, inspiring scientists and explorers out there. You heard it today. The ocean is uncharted territory, and who knows what you might find. So we encourage you to get out there and discover, and to aim to be a pioneer, just like Patrick and his incredible team. So again, thank you so much for your time today, and look forward to maybe joining you in a submarine someday. And we'll certainly put together an incredible episode around that, but really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for sharing some of those incredible stories with us.
Likewise, Grant. Thank you very much. You have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.